Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to part 2 of a critique of Yooka Laylee. Now, as we approach the more storytelling aspects of the game, it is important to cover characters. The character of this game and the characters in this game are brimming with life and individuality, tying familiar characters with more specific mechanics, misconceptions, abilities, minigames, and adventure, while tying additional and supporting members of the cast to specific levels in order to provide some sense of cohesion and consistency in theme. Add the classic Rare style of humor and you have a living, breathing world filled with entertaining and endearing characters. But it's not really enough that I just say that, so let's have a little look-see. Yooka, throughout the game, has a very straightforward and honest approach in conversation with people. You'll find the character to be assertive and kind, willing to assist anyone who's in need, simply to help them, which I believe would usually hit pretty placidly if not for the counterpart. Laylee is a fun-loving, selfish asshole with the tendency to insult and annoy many characters, including what we can assume is her best friend Yooka. Laylee will regularly make it clear that she likes to look out for herself, and by extension, Yooka. This means that her motivations are all displayed as being very self-centered. She wanted to get the book back in order to sell it, so she'll do anything to get the pages in order to reach that goal, but will miss no opportunity to insult each of the characters she meets throughout the world, and combined with Yooka, makes for a very interesting and satisfying back and forth between characters, while also binding the unlikely duo in a yin-yang sort of way. They look fantastic in terms of character design, from Laylee's overgrown nose and her cute little feet hanging at the back of Yooka's head to Yooka's curled tail and glove-like hands. There is detail throughout them, and as the main stars, it only makes sense that they're given this level of endearment and detail. Opposing them are two equally interestingly designed characters. Capital B is a fat, frustrated, greedy corporate bee who wants to right the world to how he sees fit. He spends his time in the game trying to reach his overall domineering goal while belittling each of the heroes and his workers. Complete with a honeycomb cane and an ill-fitting piece of clothing with his initials sewn in, a very classic suit and tie and a series of sharp broken teeth, a glance from his spiky, misshapen and veiny eyes give you a strong sense of his presence and what he represents. Next up is Dr. Quack, who seems to be more of a subordinate enemy. Being sent as a reporter of trivia and stats, he will take opportunities to exercise power and pride while remaining in safety as much as possible. He is clearly self-centered while remaining careful for the most part. He's an opportunist. Quack is living in a repurposed gumball machine complete with a DIY medical head mirror and 3 wheels to power him around the course. But he doesn't do very well when ramps aren't present. Both Quack and Capital B open the game being surrounded by their army of corplets, who are essentially faceless drones doing exactly what they're asked of. I guess you could say that Capital B and his oppressive goal of controlling the way things go represents Microsoft and their control of Rare when they bought them, and the corplets represent the incredibly brain-trusted normies who buy game after game, year after year, of series that have been run into the ground simply because there's nothing else for them to do, and thusly defend their purchase against those who seek to criticize them. Or, you know, it's not, whatever. Every basic corplet in the game is essentially just stupid. They are the most mindless set of idiots who lash out at anything they don't understand. How's that for symbolism? The awesome thing is that they change their design based on whether you go into the Hub World, Tribal Stack Tropics, Glitter Glaze Glacier, Moody Maze Marsh, Capital Casino, and Galleon Galaxy. Each one is set to fit the theme, and they provide a sort of basic enemy type to battle every once in a while. Moving up from that is the Corplet Drone, which is essentially a bee that has been given horrifying science fiction level surgery that has left its lifeless attitude to that of plopping out some spiny orange blobs. Then there's the hulking Corplet Crusher, who seems more like a failed experiment, flailing his arms around while essentially just being a beefed up version of the default Corplet. It's not like there's some huge character-defining traits to glean from this selection, but it is reassuring that even the most unimportant creatures in the world have a sense of crafted design. As a more neutral character though, we have Trrower. Trrower has made it into many reviews, even the most critical ones, as the best character in the game. People certainly appreciate the pun associated with him, but more so the design in total of the character himself. Trrower is a slimy car salesman, the stereotype we know from many pieces of media. His goal is to make everything sound like an incredible deal, and to talk a lot about how much his life is doing so well, so as to convince you to follow his advice and his offers. Trrower is entirely selfish by nature, but lacks any kind of nefarious goal that stands in the way of our main heroes. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Trrower provides all the player's abilities throughout the game, but it is for a price. His conversations will almost always involve him making a grand claim about his work or his travels while convincing you that he has exactly the best things available for you to purchase. Trrower feels very dirty. The design team gave him a worn and muddy trilby, which is often associated with that of out-of-work detectives with alcohol issues, a relatively sallow and boring tie that has no suit to complement with, and a stained brick phone he will regularly pull out of and shove into his shorts whenever in conversation with you. Trrower seems to be the culmination of a series of flip deals, buying things secondhand or simply cheaper for the deal. Trrower, more so than other characters, will reference other worlds regularly to make them feel a little bit more interconnected. He's extremely well realized and indeed a contender for the best character in the game. My personal favorite's a little different though. Then we have the supporting cast, a series of characters you don't really see very often but still have some very memorable appearances. Dr. Puzz, a scientist who's had all her work stolen by Dr. Quack, is an experimenter that ended up having a small accident that made her half octopus. Hence Puzz. This has resulted in her having to keep her head inside a fishbowl at all times in order to breathe, I assume. Hopefully the goldfish inside doesn't mind. Her lab coat is sprayed with several stains that speak more to sudden splashes of multiple colors, adding to the experimental personality. Whenever you speak with her, she'll be happy to tell you that you can now be transformed into a myriad of different forms across each of the worlds. Puzz has the simple goal of building technology, and this allows her to act as an assistant to you, which is essentially a trade because it helps you get pages, but it also helps her forward her tech. Next up is Rextro64us, whom is a friendly polygonal dinosaur that is stuck a little too far in the past. Rextro has a sweet set of details made to look like a low-res texture filling a rigid model. He wears a play coin around his neck in a way that implies he kind of idolizes the past. In all of his interactions, he will reference something about the industry as a whole and how it has progressed, implicitly for the worse. Also, he breaks the fourth wall quite a bloody bit. He goes as far as to parody asset-flipping games by making them himself, claiming that he is using assets from a game and everything is clearly ripped from Yooka Laylee. And so, to a lesser extent, we have Vendy, the vendor, that is given a terrifyingly large smile and a Rivet Girl-style head tie littered with play symbols. Vendy is happy to help you throughout the game and pops up in each world to provide you the opportunity to change out or grab some new Playtonics. Sir Scoffalot of Hammerlot and his knights are regulars, with Scoffalot himself sporting a belt of donuts and a candy cane to munch on while he hands out his quests and shows off his specifically tailored knight outfit. Planker, a conscious and living series of wood nailed together, ignores everything you say and demands you to complete jobs. He's a bit of a prick, but I have to say the way that the planks move while he has dialogue is pretty neat, and it makes several expressions that resemble a face. Clara the Skeleton Explorer will usually have some kind of explorer-related issue to solve, like evading capture or finding a hidden gem, but for the most part seems rather quiet and straightforward. She is less quirky as the characters go, but still well conceived as a quest giver. To get more specific to the worlds themselves, however, let's look at one from each of them. In Tribal Stack Tropics, we have the aristocratic corplet, who in my opinion is seriously lacking a monocle, but still has a lot of well-written dialogue that gives the impression he believes himself to be far superior to those others, while enjoying his well-finished inner temple ruins. In Glitterglaze Glacier, there is Bernie the Boiler, with a cold who is complaining until you release the breeze block from his stomach, or whatever. In Moody Maze Marsh, you meet an overly enthusiastic pumpkin who seems to be very interested in helping you through this world and collecting pages. I mean, it's weird because the other pumpkins just stare at you while you walk past them. I mean, like, what do they want? Why? Stop taunting me! In Capital Casino, you'll meet a series of Bandito slot machines that have come to life that will explain and set up many of the token-producing quests within the world itself. Their overall goal seems to be that they want to cheat you out of money despite the fact that you never actually put anything down yourself. But the look of these guys is so fucking awesome and the match to the environment is on point. Finally, in Galleon Galaxy, we get the plucky space cadet who seemingly must stop weapons productions from the enemy faction, but as you progress through her mission you'll find that you may not have been assisting someone in desperate need of defense after all. Now, I have skipped over the lesser characters a little to simply show their designs and what they mainly represent, but there are some more I want to go over. In Moody Maze Marsh, there are a set of trolley characters. Now in Britain there are just so many jokes about trolleys that work, like stories of people who live in them and how you always find trolleys in the weirdest of places, but they'll always be rusted, broken, and complete with wheels that literally will never be able to run straight ever again. This set of trolleys in Moody Maze Marsh are all broken, rusted, depressed, and doomed to a life of mediocrity and swamp. Among these characters is Jolly, the water manager, complete with water wings and a ridiculous sense of whimsy when it comes to the complete pointlessness of his job. Wally, the more more chav-like trolley who encourages vandalism and wears a cap and chains to really sell it, comes close yet again to this crazy sense of character creation, but neither of those two come very close to the wonderful little Ollie. Ollie the trolley is essentially a quest giver for the maze that is adjacent to him. He is someone of very little self-esteem and has sagging, seemingly empty carrier bags strewn about him. He's covered in rust, mold, scratches, and general debris while trying to remain in some sort of reasonable outlook. When speaking to him, it becomes clear that he has absolutely no aspirations and operates as a source of information for travelers in a huge swamp. Upon collecting the maze pagey, Ollie will express genuine happiness and hope for the future and for himself. He's come this far and he has seen two heroic individuals beat the odds and complete the course, so why can't he? And so yeah, fuck that. You suck. Go back to being a useless broken trolley, you shit. I found this so hilarious and surprising for the characters to engage in, despite that they're all set up this way along with the environment, and it was the cleanest way to do the joke. Combine it with the fact that it was just one small event driven by character in a world stuffed with it, and you realize it's quite a unique experience. There is no denying that there is a repeated use of characters in the worlds, with things like the snowmen and the slot machines, but they do have determining characteristics. And it's nice to see character sets for each of the worlds, combined with the one-shots and recurring characters with a world guide on top of that. In conclusion, these characters don't all have deep and meaningful histories with inspiring arcs, but they work perfectly for the environments. And let's not deny the variety of them. We literally go from an animal to an inanimate object to a fucking trolley to weather, and it's bloody wonderful. Now what else is there when it comes to characters? Ah yes, let's talk about...
Having every little piece of text literally make some noise was fine in the 90s, but nowadays it's kind of like, yeah, maybe try to find a new way of doing that kind of thing.
Grunts repeated over and over and over and over, and I hate it.
In 2017 you don't, and you either mute the television or you get a screwdriver to your eardrum. It is that excruciating.
The strange grunts and noises from every single NPC that stand in as voice work just don't have the same charm anymore.
And it's still funny today. Things don't age. Literally. We all live forever, nobody dies, and nothing gets old. And that's what I love the most about Yooka Laylee, is the noises.
Forced to listen to some of the most irritating and insufferable noise I've ever heard, and after the initial giggle from you, it's too slow, not funny, not clever, and way too loud.
How this ever got past a development meeting without someone getting punched in the face is beyond me. This isn't just bad, it's terrible. We have the typical sound effect voice here, with each character having some sound effect that plays for every single word they say in a sentence, and while that's not necessarily new, it's also not surprising that it's goddamn infuriating.
So it's safe to assume that everybody bloody hated the voices for the most part. Well, let's have a look-see. Yooka Laylee being set in a magical land, and of course being the spiritual successor to Banjo that it is, was going to choose to have this style of voice almost by necessity. Would I have preferred actual voices doing the job? Sure, I would, but the real question is just how annoying these voices are. I guess now let me get the disclaimer out of the way that it is different for everybody. I'm gonna try and get some level of objectivity or fairness here. Other games have performed this crap in the past and haven't received the same criticism. Super Mario Sunshine had characters that literally say... Whilst there are several other popular titles that include these design choices, most notably would be Banjo-Kazooie, which, upon giving it a few replays, it did feel as though the voices were more constructed of sound effects than people making silly noises. However, let's not forget the fact that it is an actual reward for backers to be a voice in the game at particular levels. So what is going on then? To explain some of the hate, it is literally down to the absolute lambasting the game has been receiving as a release for literally every possible feature.
I don't see any rational adult male, or female for that matter, who'd want to play this game. It's a colourful little...
So this one may have been overlooked normally, but it's been propped up as a signal fire for the overall quality of the game. I streamed some of the reviews you've seen in clips already, but honestly, something we've noticed as a small but plucky community is that people have been cranking the volume on voice clips for the game to make it appear even worse than it is. It's really fucked up in terms of honesty. But there has to be more to consider, so let's check out some of the worst voices. Now, all of these voices irked me, with the heart expansion one honestly making me wince, and my chat felt the same way. It's too bloody much. I don't know what made them think that a scratched metal scrape clank sound would be really great to hear over and over again in different tones, but they tried it anyway. There should undeniably be a volume slider for the voices, but I believe that is one of the things they are throwing in the first patch. So aside from them, we have some more run-of-the-mill voices that didn't faze me whatsoever. I mean, fuck though, if you're gonna have Shovel Knight, give him a better voice than that. I actually figured a voice like him going, "Oh," in a really manly sort of way once at the beginning of dialogue may have been a good idea to separate him from the rest and make him stay underplayed. But whatever, there's a few voices that I thought were actually pretty good.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Now these voices are not only not annoying to listen to, but to be honest, they are really well suited to the characters that have them. They can really add to the environment at hand as well as the world that's being crafted. This childish wonderland filled with whimsy and nonsense and talking clouds really does fall right in with this. Funnily enough, one of the voices I found to be a little more annoying was Capital B and his repeated lines. Though I do want to bring up that his voice was less annoying than Grunty's voice in Banjo. And she said equal amounts of repetitive shit, so when people criticize this, I just like them to be more consistent and tell me that Banjo fucked it up too, as opposed to saying, people in the 90s, they just didn't really hear things like we do now. Basically, take both games or leave both games. The voices aren't even close to bad enough to explain everybody's baby-like response to having to listen to them, but they have instances of annoyance that I will happily show you myself. Seriously though, I think this game had a lot of voice acting opportunity, some chances for real voices to give a level of vibrancy to the voices themselves, adding another layer to an already cleverly designed set of characters.
Yar, who goes there? The rules are clear. Ye must announce yourself when entering the captain's cabin.
Why don't you just turn the lights on?
The lights? Darn it, man. You know the captain has an irrational fear of shadows. Es tu segundo compañero, Billy. Ah yes, Billy. I didn't recognize you before with that strange lizard voice. You're a bit early, Billy. The captain's rub-down ain't due for another hour. Until then, be gone with ye.
So with all of that out of the way, let's move on to something a little bit meatier. So one thing I found perplexing in that people aren't really mentioning it much is the difference in physics for this game versus the average. We're dealing with what seems to be very floaty physics. Most if not all objects seem to be very lightweight and if pushed in the right direction can float across a pathway. This doesn't cause problems in any real way and adds to the whimsical feel of the game. However, it is an interesting deviation from the usual way video games incorporate physics. Though something that can be annoying is how shrubbery behaves, or any selection of plant that you find in the worlds. It sort of pushes back against you as you approach, and then finally allows you to pass. The really weird thing is when plants and objects interact, you get really weird shit going on. What you're seeing is me being able to stack a whole bunch of boxes to the top of each other because of how weirdly this shit interacts. Aside from that, I also found it very distracting that there are certain segments when textures fade into and out of existence. There are some interactions that are more distracting, such as the activation of these platforms just sort of having a delay then popping into existence, or these targets simply disappear the moment they are hit and sort of come across as animationless when it doesn't feel like they should be. Like, this is a game where you would fully expect it to be a smooth transitional animation for the targets to break away or fade, but these in particular sort of stood out in that regard. Perhaps it pertains to a level of spit and polish they talked about in their coming update. Finally, you can essentially scale anything in this game. You'll find yourself being able to essentially jump on some of the most obscure platforms created entirely from stones and structures jutting out from the sides of buildings. Being able to get to the greatest heights and the lowest lows from the get-go is really an awesome little experience for the player. Jumping around and platforming can easily result in finding some awesome shit you may have thought unreachable at that point in the game, though it can have the drawback of leading you to certain death, but only if you make that final jump as you have no other choice. Ultimately though, this level of understanding for the system can result in some very interesting skips for those who are willing to try them, though I don't know if they are intended. Of course, you could get to the areas with flight, but you would unlock that far later. So let's talk about control and reception. At the top of the scale, we have something like Super Meat Boy that has some of the tightest controls and feel in a game, and then on the other side we have something like, oh, I don't know, an uncalibrated Guitar Hero controller when you press shit and it ends up on the screen years later. How does Yooka Laylee compare? Everything is tight. Very tight. I sat for a good hour making sure that controls reacted to your inputs either instantly or in a way that followed rules. The game is highly consistent. Move up, down, left, right, jump with these intentions, roll, attack, fly, speed roll, all of it works very well. I've heard some retarded complaints from certain reviewers.
The controls are just fucking abysmal for the most part. Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie had better and tighter controls in this game. This is just a load of donkey farts.
It becomes very clear it's the player that is having a rough time with the game instead of the controls being responsive or easy to use. Like, seriously, you can't make that jump. You're just struggling like crazy to make it around any of that bit. I'll show you how easy it is, Critical. It's really not that difficult. Here I am, performing the simple and responsive task of using a double jump in a very easy to approach manner and successfully traversing this fearsome feat. Here I am, performing the simple and responsive task of using a double jump in a slightly moderate to approach manner and successfully traversing this horrifying hindrance. Here I am, performing the simple and responsive task of using a rolling mechanic to approach in a difficult manner and successfully traversing this baffling barrier. Here I am, performing the simple and responsive task of using a single jump in a simple to approach manner and successfully traversing this crude complication. Like, seriously, I can't understand for the life of me the actual impact of this argument whatsoever. You could tell me that it feels like something and have your perspective, but the fact remains that you press buttons and actions will take place on the screen in a nanosecond of time in a tight and responsive fashion that allows you to have complete control of your character. There's no opinion to have about the responsiveness of the controls. You're just making that up. I don't know what your agenda is, Critical, but you're gonna have to try a hell of a lot harder than that if you want to make this game look bad when it's simply an issue of your own incompetence.
The biggest problem, the one that single-handedly destroys a lot of the game's enjoyment potential, is the controls.
Alright folks, when you're faced with validating a criticism, it is often fair to request a little evidence. In this case, I would say I demand evidence, since taking a puppet seriously is going to be difficult. Let's see what he's got.
Then anytime you're using a special ability, like rolling or flying or really anything that's just not normal running, forget about it. The slightest mistake will send you careening off a ledge.
You what? You literally roll yourself into a wall for a handful of seconds and then decide to jump over the ledge and commit suicide. This is your evidence of bad controls. Are you fucking kidding me? Is there more? Is there more to this?
Even worse, there are all these little lips and crannies that you get snagged on when you're trying to run or jump.
What? All you had to do to cross the tiny obstacle was jump, and you felt that makes the controls bad? What the hell's going on? What, you literally just need to hit jump. Stop walking into, why are you walking into it? What the fuck, why you puppet? You had more than a month to make a proper review and you just stuck your hand in a discount Cookie Monster outfit and gobbled a load of nonsense. What is happening? I'm sorry, I should have a cup of tea. Let's see what Donkey has to say.
Sometimes the controls are razor tight, other times they're slippery and imprecise.
Holy Moses. Okay, so the example he has for it being hard to control is on slopes, that you have to jump to and fro while the area is shrouded in darkness. Yes, this section is indeed probably the most difficult area in terms of controlling the jump while rolling. This is true, but not because of unresponsive controls or lack of control. This is the challenge. I find it extremely difficult to feel any sense of sympathy for someone who casually uses video evidence in a very dishonest way for these reviews. But Critical deliberately fucking up a jump and Donkey picking up one of the most difficult sections in the game is just bloody unfair to the game itself. Let me show you something. This is a section of land that is available in the first world, and I traverse it when I need to get from the area before it to the area after it. Do you think this would be easy to do if the controls were terrible? The roll has this great sense of inertia that feels a lot like control of driving a car. You have the massively improved speed but the inferior handling, but the jump will allow you to course correct whenever you want. Honestly, I think people have forgotten what it feels like to play many of the platformers of the age it's referencing and how often you would feel like the game screwed you over with a certain jump or ledge when in reality you simply didn't react fast enough. Obviously that doesn't stay true to every game, but I can confirm the mechanics do indeed function. Well, in terms of the player input and character output, I don't know if it's going to really be functioning if the person using it isn't of sound mind. People seriously need to stop mistaking slippery and challenging forms of ground that you walk on for bad controls. Not to say get good, but stop blaming things you don't understand. Like seriously, you will encounter moments in which things are really hard to traverse, but this is on the player to perform and succeed, an intrinsic part to the platformer experience. So just about what can you do in this game? Well, let's run a little list. You can walk, run, jump, double jump, swim, attack, roll, target, fire a sonar shot via varying projectiles, slam the ground, combo moves, hide jump, absorb the projectiles of different substances, walk underwater, grapple, cloak, charge a rush, fly, and shield yourself. To sort of give a little more information, the walking and running consume the vast majority of the game, with each of the other mechanics listed being used for casual movement and obstacle evasion while also acting as keys throughout the world. Like Lizard Lash, acting as a fast way to get around, opening shortcuts and moving objects. Or the Buddy Bubble, enabling you to open shortcuts once again, survive running low on breath, and allowing you to enter into puzzle solving. More extended in terms of explanation would basically amount to moves that are being provided to you at a meticulous pace, giving you time to adjust and understand your moves with room for experimentation. What is very commendable is that you will find multiple uses for each of the new moves you're provided, being that they have primary and secondary functions. For example, the cloak allows you to pass through all forms of mechanical security and even slip by the organic ones while allowing you to reflect light and concentrate it on enemies. They create an entire course surrounding the idea of being able to walk on water or float in it at will, while of course Buddy Bubble allows you to find some very well hidden secrets throughout the world as well. I have to say I love the attention that went into making a decent selection of moves that all have a strong purpose. One of the issues I found with banjo-tooie was the ever-increasing set of moves, which some felt like they just did the same thing as another one, but now did more. Another aspect of the mechanics would be Dr. Puzz's transformations that will provide you with a completely new look. One that is consistent in prominent features and color palette, but will also provide you with something of an entirely new set of moves. The plant, the plow, the fish, the heli, and the ship all have their own benefits and drawbacks, with the flower being the only one that was in any way a significant drop in terms of quality, but I assume that is the case in order to remain a tutorial style experience. Being that it was the first transformation with only one page related to task, the plow is however a step up in difficulty as it requires you to get around the map, then providing us with bigger firepower and exploration mechanics accompanied with the later transformations for levels 4 and 5. This system is a hell of a step up from Mumbo, considering that the transformations are far more detailed and meaningful in terms of actual tasks you're able to perform. In addition, you can transform back into your original selves at any point you choose, though sometimes it seems to bug out. It is a really neat set of mechanics to look at and appreciate. When you become the plow or the helicopter, you will have a completely different outlook on the level you were just exploring. A lot of people have been critical of the transformations, and I say fuck them. These things were awesome. Finding them molly cool to gain the ability means that you would have noticed at least something about the level that your transformation would be useful for, whether it's an ignorant character or something that looks as if it could be exploded. It was not only brought back from Banjo, it was built upon quite successfully. Anyway, that's about all the time I have for now. Thanks for watching, folks, and next time, we're going to take a huge chunk out of the mechanics. I'll see you there.